Thank you very much. Thank you again for joining us today. You'll now take part in the panel debate. And I would also like to welcome again Jakob Pagter, Johnny Lundberg, and Mr. Bruce Schneier to take part in the panel debate, which is then moderated by David Simonsen. So I don't have to hand over any microphone because he has one. I will leave it here in case you might need it.
So please have a seat, and thank you very much for joining the panel here. I think it's hard to imagine a stronger panel. We have academics, we have people with hands-on experience and deep knowledge about everything. We have policemen with many, many years of experience, and everybody here have agreed to give a view on various questions that we have. And let's start to discuss. I have prepared some questions that I will present here at the very beginning. I think we should open up the floor for questions along the way. But to start off with, I would like to see or to hear from you what are the biggest threats that you see. That maybe be 1, 2, or 3, but as the title of this conference is digital threats, I think it would be nice to get an impression of what the threats, the really important ones are. And I am aware that we can look at this from different angles. It could be from a nationwide angle, or it could be from a personal perspective. But I hope that you would, and you're more than welcome to discuss among each other. Lars, perhaps you who sit nearest here could give it a try and see what
are the biggest threats?
The biggest threats at the moment, yes, please.
I think maybe the biggest threat is that people don't use cryptography enough. I mean, everybody speaks on a mobile phone, but you don't encrypt your speak because you can't. So no products there. Well, now they're coming. You don't encrypt your emails very often, I don't think. So I think the biggest threat is that people don't follow the cryptographer's advice, because we've been saying it for years. And actually, the Snowden revelations are, I mean, they are a surprise, but not really. I mean, we knew that they were capable of doing this. Maybe we didn't know that they were doing it in that scale. And we've been warning, we've been encouraging people to use encryption for years, so the biggest threat comes from ourselves.
So we the threat is ourselves.
I'll have to say something.
I'm sorry. I'm certainly Lars is right. If you read any book or watch any movie where the NSA is the villain, this is exactly the sort of thing they do. I mean, it's not a surprise to anybody. I think that the top 3 threats are easy to describe. I think the top threat right now to security is government. The second, close behind, is corporations. And the third, far behind, is cybercriminals. Those are the 3 threats you worry about. Not necessarily in that order, but those are them.
I think one of our biggest problems is that we don't have similar legislation throughout the world. I know it's not possible to do it sort of within a foreseeable future, but as long as you don't have the same legislation, it opens up for cyber criminals to act in countries where that particular kind of crime isn't covered by legislation. So I say it's quite a different point of things. It is that you really need to have an equal legislation of some kind. Then can you make a safer community, a safer society by having that you can ensure that criminals are convicted whether they commit their crime in Denmark or on the Philippines or whatever.
So that very much seems to be some kind of a cultural problem as well. Mm-hmm. Yes, Jakob?
Yeah, I don't know, so it's a hard question, I think, but I think that maybe could be worried about a backlash. I mean, if you want to secure the infrastructure and you end up with kind of a technocracy, where we come up with some very complicated to secure infrastructure ways of communicating that the ordinary user is no longer in control of, but is left to the cryptographers to understand and control. I think because right now it's hard for ordinary users to understand how to use such tools, and I don't think it will be easier in the future necessarily.
So that's a usability point of view.
You could argue that, yeah. I think, yeah, but it's also a question of who has responsibility. I mean, as an individual user, can I control my own data, or is it left to somebody else that I still have to trust?
Okay, so we have ourselves, we have the governments, and we have culture, and we have usability as important parts of this puzzle here. Then, of course, we also have to look at some of the solutions. We have heard many angles to this theme over the day, but in the room here we have small, medium, and big size companies, I'm sure. What would be your recommendations to them to secure their employees, their products, their businesses, and so forth? What would be the lowest hanging fruits for them to do? It could be, for instance, something like risk analysis, maybe. It may be anything, but what would you recommend that we all do tomorrow, or maybe even this evening?
Encrypt everything. Bruce, you mentioned it earlier.
You know, I mean, I always recommend that you never accept recommendations from four guys on stage at some conference. Right? These questions are hard. You know, if it was, 10 tips to secure your life, we would have published them years ago. We would have gone home and gotten new jobs. These problems are real, they're subtle, they're complex. If you're a business, there's a lot of different things you have to worry about. What you should do tomorrow depends on a lot of details of what you've been doing all along. And, I mean, I could give little things, but I just tend not like to do that. Because I think it really trivializes what is actually a complex process. Security isn't easy. It's not pulling something out of the box and making it work. I mean, that great story of the secure algorithm, which was implemented insecurely, is just one of 1,000 examples of how the details matter in ways that are so surprising. We're living in a world now where, in a lot of cases, there's not a lot you can do. That the question is not, what should I do tomorrow, but who should I trust? And that is I think, more important and a much more social question. Who do I trust tomorrow? Do I trust Google? Do I trust Huawei? Do I trust Microsoft? Do I trust Linux? Do I trust my employees? How do I make all that work? And this is no different than the rest of your life. Do I trust my doctor, the guy cooking my food at the restaurant, the building codes, keeping this roof over our heads? And those are the questions you really have to answer.
I think you have to put IT security on the agenda. Now, you represent a great number of companies and businesses, but there is still an even greater number of businesses that do not care about IT security, never have looked upon the necessity of addressing that issue. I can see that from the complaints that we're receiving, that there is a great number of companies that find they're too small, they don't know where to go to get the knowledge how to address IT security. I think it's quite important that that is put on the agenda, that small and medium-sized companies are aware of, that they are often targeted because their fences are down, they are not aware of the necessity of having some sort of fences up towards cybercrime.
I have this notion that we have heard for many years someone like the cryptographers crying wolf, and there has been no reaction. Somehow this has changed a lot. The whole scene has changed a lot with the Snowden revelations. What is it that makes them so particularly strong in boosting a conversation that many of us have hoped for and many of you have worked with for such a long time?
Oh, I can tell you that. It's full of code names, and code names are fundamentally cool.
Yes, yes. I'm surprised about how they can make so many
Oh,
cool
codename.
codes.
There's not enough code names in my life. That's what I've learned. You know, so few. I'm going to call you now Star Child. I'm going to write that down.
There was also the way they done it. The way they did it. Journalists to reveal a little by little, not all of it at once. It has had it's much more in the media than, I mean, anybody else would just reveal the whole thing. I think that also helped make it more clear. The alvor, the curiosity in it.
Do we have to get affected by this before we really start to care? I mean, Chancellor Merkel, she was very, very upset when she was attacked, so to speak, when the revelations hit her. And Dianne Feinstein last week, she has been a very strong proponent of the NSA and all the activities, surveillance activities, and chairing the Intelligence Committee. All of a sudden, she found herself in this whirlpool of alleged CIA violations of their work, and now she's very offended. When do I get that offended? When do we, as a society, get so angry that something really strong appears as a public movement? Can you put some words on what you think it takes? Because what we have already learned, I think, is affecting all of us. It's all our mobile phones, it's all of our emails, it's all of our searches and everything. So what will it take to get this outroar? You said we shouldn't just worry, we should be very angry about it. But at least in the Danish context, the uproar is, I think we're waiting for that still.
I think the effect on people's lives is very invisible. Right? That's my point. Yeah. And we're all in Egypt. It's very tangible what's going on. This is kind of somebody is reading my email. I don't know really who or why or what, but I mean they might be. Probably my email is not interesting, so maybe I don't care. It's at a meta level, right? It's metadata, but it's also at a consciously, I think, at a meta level. It's not concretely that I can see they took some of my stuff.
But it seems that it gets accepted. If you said this 2 or 3 years ago, that everybody was reading all of your email, it was being stored, or that your mobile phone could be turned, the microphone could be turned on without you knowing it, you would be called paranoid. But now it's just accepted. It's not a big debate or something that people really get upset about. So even when we get affected personally, is it just a lost battle? Is that the feeling that we have now, or is it, what is it? Anyone?
Hopefully it's because Danish citizens have what would you call it? They have a trust in the authorities, knowing that there are limitations for what we do, and what we do within the limit of the legislation. So even though Snowden has been out with his revelation, as a Danish citizen, I believe that once you can't feel it on yourself, you can put your trust in the authorities, and that's what people are doing. I have nothing to fear. Why should I worry?
So that makes me think of context, timelines, and the lot. Is that the same situation in America?
You know, there largely is a lot of not care. I mean, you know, in the security community, these stories are big. In the rest of the world, in the United States, they're not. I mean, yes, Angela Merkel is upset when her phone is tapped, and President Obama promised not to tap her phone anymore. The rest of the whatever million German citizens are, you know, still up for grabs. You know, Dianne Feinstein is perfectly happy with the NSA tapping all of our everything, but not her. I mean, so there's a lot of, you know, do it to everyone else, don't do it to me. And when it becomes personal, it becomes real. I mean, you people in the Ukraine, you know, a couple of months ago, who attended government protests, got a message on their cell phone. because the Ukraine government was tracking their cell phone location. And the message said simply, I think you've been registered as attending an anti-government rally, which is incredibly chilling. Right? Dissidents in Syria and Egypt have been arrested and have been handed copies of their chats, their emails, that they thought were private. So there are some places where it's very personal. There are some places in the world where this is very, very real and affects your life. And, you know, in places like the United States, we largely believe that this kind of stuff happens elsewhere. You know, the argument from the other side is, it's very simple and very hard to refute. It's that terrorists will kill your children. It is fundamentally a fear-based argument. It is not rational, it is not logical, but it pushes your fear button, it gets you to comply, and it gets the budget. In the United States, that's what gets the money. And rhetoric about the value of privacy, the value of having your own thoughts and your own conversations, that when your data is all exposed, the notion of probable cause changes, that everybody does something that is potentially embarrassing. Everybody, especially in a complex country like the United States, or even here, does things that are illegal all the time. The study I saw in the US is that the average person breaks 5 laws a day. Not because they're out breaking laws, because there are just so many laws and you can't live without that. And when you're in that society, suddenly, not as everyone's a suspect, but as soon as anyone proves to be a problem, they can become a suspect. These are all very complex arguments, and they really are don't stand up to, terrorists will kill your children right now, be scared. And until that goes away, until we get some sanity back, I think it's unlikely this will change. It has to. Right? It's just untenable for us to be moving away from a free society into a surveillance state. Right? I just don't think the human species is going to do that. This is a temporary setback. But, you know, it is because we're all scared.
So when I was with a colleague of mine in Washington just a few weeks ago, all of a sudden on the iPhone, even though there was no cell phone coverage, all of a sudden came out an orange alert that a child had been kidnapped, and everybody within the range of a few miles from the cell tower of where that incident happened should look out for a Mercedes-Benz which had this license number and so forth. And that was pushed out to telephones that had no coverage. We were in a building where there was no coverage, and all of a sudden this orange alert came out. And I thought to myself that this is the fear culture where you can use on the one hand side this as a helping tool to find my kid that has disappeared. Later we found out that nothing happened, but you know, thousands of people got this message, and they could be helpful, of course, but also they get this, I could imagine this kind of anxiety that it's a dangerous society we have. And in fact, the girl had just probably run away from her mother, who called, what do you call in America, 911. And off it went.
What do you dial here?
The 112.
Wow.
Yeah, no international alignment for 112.
I better write that down. Hey, thanks. It's good to know. They should tell you this at the airport.
Yes, there are many things they should do at the airport, in fact. Going back, there's this, what you call the security theater, where the TSA official was looking at, you know, the passport and your face and the boarding pass and everything. And my colleague was actually not detected. They had issued the wrong boarding pass to him. There was another Mr. Peterson on that flight. So it was not working at all. So what I would like to ask you is, what can we stop doing? What should we take out and just stop doing to get to not an orange alert society where we from time to time get poked with, this is dangerous, here's the situation, and this is dangerous again, and so forth. Are there things that we could stop doing? And airport security and other places where you want security or don't want security could probably be discussed. There's a policeman here in the panel.
No, I'm quite in favor of so many information being collected and being available as possible, because that helps me investigating. So I wouldn't like if some sort of if something was stopped, because I can do whatever information, I can use whatever information is available. So keep on registering and logging and
You also talked about in your presentation about the need to break Tor if necessary. Could you say a few more words about how you see the world as a policeman who has, you're tasked with solve this crime, find the guy and all of this, and then perhaps also put some perspective onto what does that mean for me, and I claim to be a good guy.
We can see that we have a problem, that people are buying, if you go to child porn, because everyone can understand the problem with child porn, but we can see people buying child porn via Tor networks, using bitcoins, for example. We can see crime is being handled via the Tor network. The dealing of arms of some kind, drugs or whatever. Even though I fully understand and respect, as well as a citizen, that people need to have some privacy. I want privacy in my dealing with the internet as well. But when I look upon it as a police officer, I need to have the possibility of investigating where the crime is. And for that reason, and of course set within the legal boundaries there are, but when that is set, areas where people are hiding themselves, hiding their crimes, will of course be a target for our interest. So with the Tor network, so will whatever Bitcoin, whatever where laundering is taking place. So I fully recognize the need for a safe internet, an internet where we as citizens can be very private. But the other angle is the police possibility to investigate, and law enforcement possibility to investigate crime.
I'm sure you have a comment.
So Tor was actually funded by the U.S. government back when we were the good guys. And Tor is fundamentally an identity tool, and Tor keeps a lot of people alive. And I mean, I think it's good that we actually don't look at society from a police officer's perspective. That is just one of the many perspectives that we look at society through. And when you look at tools, any piece of infrastructure we build, whether it's Tor or roads or restaurants or telephones, can be used by good guys and bad guys. Right? That the same tool that will feed us our dinner will feed the bank robber his dinner. And the same telephone call that's being used to plan the surprise birthday party of my wife is being used to plan the crime. And that's the way the world works. And I think we just have to accept that. And the reason the world survives, even though all of our infrastructure can be used by the good guys and the bad guys, is that there are more good guys than bad guys. Right? There are more of us who are honest, regular people than there are criminals and child pornographers and terrorists, or whatever particular thing you're supposed to be scared about right now. So when I look at a tool like Tor, I'm truly happy that he can't break it. Right? Not because I don't want him to solve his crimes. He has lots of ways to solve crimes. Right? He solved crimes before Tor, he solved crimes after Tor. We just don't have this great, huge crime wave going on right now because of these tools. Right? Crime has always existed. But because these tools are being used all over the world to protect the lives of people who need it. And security is more important than surveillance. Because I can't design a Tor that he can break, but the Chinese government can't. I can't do that. Right? It's either got to be no one can break it, or they both can. And whenever I see those, with very few exceptions, I'm going to err on the side of protecting people. Because I know that bad guys are going to screw up. We're catching child pornographers all the time, even though they're using Tor, even though they're using Bitcoin. We rounded up a ring in the United States, earlier this week. And we're going to keep doing that. Because criminals tend to be kind of dumb. It's another thing that keeps our society working. And you know why it's true? Because it's very hard to practice, right? If you want to be a barber, you cut hair lousy and you get better. If you want to be a burglar, you do a bad job, you get arrested, and you put away for 10 years. So it's very hard to practice. It's why we don't have criminal masterminds. They tend to be in movies and comic books. Right? But as long as there are people, I think we err on the side of protecting them, we err on the side of freedom, we err on the side of privacy. Because that's just a smart thing to do. Sorry.
I understand you, because when you look at it as a citizen, I want privacy as well. And there has been crime before the Tor was invented, and there will be crime after the Tor has been changed with something else. But seen from a police perspective, we of course will always go to where the crime is. We'll try to address the crime scene. And Tor is used for many good things, but as well for crime.
Like automobiles.
Exactly.
Was it Thomas Jefferson who said, if you want both freedom, complete freedom and full security, you don't deserve either of them. You have to choose somehow. Are you going for freedom, which is part of the democratic discussion, or are you going for security, which is not necessarily part of the democratic discussion, or it might inflict democratic discussion? Yes, please.
But there are ways of getting both, no? I mean, the clippership was in the mid-90s, the American government made this chip to be put in all telephones in the US that had a government key in it, so to speak. And that led many people to look into this kind of systems. And one of these systems that were proposed was to, when you and I encrypt, we sent the key to we had a field with the key encrypted under some authorities' public key. She could share this key with 3 authorities or 3 organizations that you trust, and then they all would have to go together to get the key. I mean, that's sort of meet in the middle of the two, no? I mean, it could be possible.
Could be.
And if it's built into the system, so people don't see it, that could work for encryption.
Remember, anything you don't see is good. It's the story of today's New York Times, that the Snowden revelations have damaged U.S. business, not that NSA actions. It was the fact that you now know about them instead. Which, in some ways is true, but I think this... Sorry.
No, please. I would like to ask you in the audience to participate. Yes, there's a question down here. Do we have a walking microphone?
Maybe I can shout. It's very short. It's just I really like your comments.
No one wants to shout.
University of Copenhagen, Anders Vellermann. You mentioned the Tor network, and you had a very good arguments, which I agree. But it sounded to me like the arguments are the same that the NRA is making with respect to guns.
I don't think I will comment on all these questions, because it's of course difficult for me as a police officer to see that crime is being committed without going for it. And you can find a lot of excuses for not going for it, because you need to give individuals some sort of anonymity. But you can of course always find excuses for addressing certain kind of security systems, but I think that's what I have.
Oh, another question here.
Mr. Schneier used the term the value of privacy. Back in the mid-90s, I had this sort of experience, a lot of new privacy-enhancing technologies were being discovered on an academic level, and I was thinking, wow, we are at the brink of an internet privacy revolution, and it didn't seem to happen. 20 years later, we are pretty much at the same stage. My conclusion is, it's not so much a political problem. I think most people would like the privacy on the internet to be enhanced, somewhat at least. But nobody wants to pay for it. It's not easy to do these things. It costs